My final question on capital relates to one of my colleagues, I think this morning, quoted a figure of 53 million as a backlog maintenance cost across the estate. And one of the witnesses who's made a submission to this consultation suggests that some 60 million has been spent on upgrading Parliament House over the last 6 years. I wonder if you could confirm these figures and if people are right to draw conclusions about the priorities that the Scottish Court Service has followed over that period.
I'm happy to confirm both those figures, but also just happy to give a bit of explanation. When I came to the Justice Committee last, I think it was November time, we were looking at the financial planning. We had talked about the backlog maintenance in the Court Service at that time. I think it was at 57 million. With thanks and support from the Justice Committee, we actually got additional funding last year that we have ploughed into the backlog maintenance. So we've now brought that down to about 53 million in terms of where we currently stand at the moment. Backlog maintenance is a big issue for every organisation that has a large property portfolio. That we carry out periodic condition surveys of all our buildings to find out that in terms of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors building standards, what work is required to bring it back to a satisfactory condition. Yep, and that gives us our estimating to allow us to plan for future years and decide where we prioritise in maintenance. Now, on some of those things, we have to carry some risk. We have to prioritise what are the most important things, either in terms of legislative compliance or in terms of health and safety. So sometimes we will carry out works in a building to replace electrical circuit boards, where actually people might prefer us to spend money improving things for victims and witnesses. But that's the sort of decisions that we have to make trying to run a big complex estate. So in terms of backlog maintenance, I'm quite clear about where we are and why we're in a particular position. The issue about Parliament House, we are just coming to the end of the Parliament House contract. I think in total the budget for it was 65 million. I think we're expecting the final spend to be in the low 60 million. It's a project that's been delivered on budget, on time and on quality, and I think actually is a tribute to the Scottish Court Service in terms of how they've delivered that. The potted history of Parliament House goes back a little further, when about 10 years ago there was a scheme in place which was going to run to way over, I think, about 120 million at a particular time. That was brought to a stop to allow us to reassess it, to try to look at the best strategy. And at that same time, we looked at a business case to actually move away from Parliament House altogether and look at development on a green or a brownfield site on the outskirts of Edinburgh. The major problem with Parliament House is that it is a Grade A listed building. It's a site of special historical interest, and it should be a landmark building for the whole of Scotland.
Move to a greenfield
absolutely.
site, a bit like going to B&Q.
I'm not
just aligned B&Q, but I like the old Parliament House.
Had the decision been to move out of it, essentially that asset would have been left with Scottish Government. The whole building, the infrastructure, the services were shot, there was no fire certificate in place for the building. So the actual cost of moving out was actually going to be as much as the cost of redeveloping it. So in terms of the benefit to the nation, the benefit to Scottish Government's purse, the investment money of the 65 million over that 5 or 6 year period in Parliament House was actually quite a sensible business case decision.
But you would accept the point of view that says that the assets for local communities represented by sheriff courts are very often comparable to the value of Parliament House that you place.
They are very often comparable, and that's why we're trying to do a planned investment in that same way to make sure that we keep buildings in the state that they deserve and is right for them.